Welcome to our practical guidance on songwriting session. I'm EJ, workshop leader and music tutor for Hertfordshire Music Service, and also a project officer for Changing Tracks, which is our programme that's running this. And this is Victoria.
Hello, I'm Victoria, and I'm a music tutor and workshop leader for Herts Music Service as well.
We're going to start off by talking about a case study with Victoria's songwriting students, and they attend every week, and this is about some songs that they wrote during lockdown.
So we chose 3 students who are regular participants in the weekly songwriter session at Stevenage Music Centre. 2 of them were also part of the Young Music Leaders 2018, and they received community music training and formed the Youth Council as part of Hertfordshire Give a Gig. All 3 of them participated in the Songwriter Give a Gig in April 2019, just before we went into lockdown, and had been due to perform at the event that we'd been planning for April 2020. After an approach from Nick Mallinger, Arts Development Officer from Stevenage Borough Council, Michael Davison nominated them to write a song about their experience of COVID during lockdown. The recording's now been mixed and mastered and produced by Chris at the practice rooms, and the young people got to attend a proper recording studio and attend the mixing session, so it was really useful for them and a really great experience.
Yeah, so I went to the recording session with them, and the 3 of them hadn't recorded before, so yeah, they were like, got up on the mic, so learnt about how to sing with a mic and using headphones and how you want to position your headphones if you want to have like one ear off. And then also within the mixing session as well, Chris talked about, compression, EQ, reverb, and yeah, had it on the big screen, and then they kind of asked some questions, and it was really good for them because they hadn't been involved in that kind of thing before, or even recorded, so yeah, they seemed to really, really enjoy it.
It was nice as like a next step, wasn't it? They've been a songwriter for a really long time, so actually getting to record something professionally and see how it's all done and start learning the language and seeing what it's like to be in a studio was lovely.
Yeah.
So initially we had a first session together where we just talked as a group about the impact of COVID and lockdown. We just had a bit of a chat, really. We just had a bit of a chat, bit of a catch up. What's everyone been doing? How's it felt over the last kind of couple of weeks, months? And initially we focused a lot on the negatives. So the words that came up were things like feeling isolated, feeling lonely. So I wrote all of these on the board, literally everything that came out. We talked about any words or phrases or feelings that they'd felt. The big thing that came up actually that we talked about a lot was how useful social media is, and messaging and email and that kind of thing, how useful that is to stay in contact with people. But actually what that meant was that sometimes we're not connecting on a deeper level. So we all missed that human connection, even just hearing someone's voice. And I really liked that they came up with a line. They said, phone never rings, you never call, I never call, we never call. So they were kind of saying, it's not just that their friends aren't calling them, it's that they're not calling their friends as well. It was this kind of circle of not communicating because you sent a text message, and that was kind of enough. So that was a really nice, or it wasn't a really nice thing that came up, but it was an interesting subject that came up that we managed to pull lots of other lyrics from.
And they could all relate to, and other people could relate to as well. Like, that's such a relatable thing.
Yeah.
Because some people went into like quite recluse, or if they've just lived with one person, they're just like in a bubble. It was hard.
Absolutely. And we were also saying how it's so easy with things like Instagram and Facebook, and I know I'm guilty of this, and they all said the same thing, is that because sometimes you see pictures and you see statuses and everything else, you almost think you know how someone's getting on, so you don't necessarily always reach out because you think, I've seen blah 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 today, but you actually haven't. So yeah, it was really interesting, the impact of kind of social media. So the students also felt that the shared experience of COVID was quite a uniting factor. So although we've kind of experienced it all quite differently in some ways, there have been some experiences that we've all felt. So that idea sometimes of maybe loneliness or isolation or frustration. And they commented on how they felt the government had failed to act quick enough. And they also talked about how some had lost family members during this time. So I kind of just let them speak, and I just put everything up on the board. Student P said, we have to get through this. We don't have any other choice. And the group collectively wrote, "I know that we'll get through because I believe in you," which I thought was a really lovely message, really positive. Although this initial song, we were focusing on a lot of the negatives around COVID, that kind of final line at the end of each chorus was that actually we're going to get through this and it's going to be okay because we have this kind of belief in each other.
And how did you direct it away from the negative to positive, or did that just naturally happen with the group?
Just naturally happened with the group, because my plan was, because we were going to write 2 songs, my plan was for the second song, let's think about all the positives. But just as we were talking and as we were working together, I guess that natural kind of cohesion of working with people again maybe helped us all feel a bit more positive, and so they came up with that nice final line. So then absolutely, so the next song that we wrote, or that they wrote, sorry, was talking about the positives of lockdown, and we used exactly the same method. I said, okay, you know what, like, let's end on a high, let's talk about some of the fun things that we've done, or some of the things maybe that have been unexpected positives of lockdown. And student A said that she'd really enjoyed spending time with her family and going on walks together, which was something that they'd never really done before. And she just said it was really nice to finally have some time. And I just said, that's your opening line. And she wrote, "Finally, I have the time to be with you," which I thought was really strong and really lovely. And so reflective of COVID and what's been going on and that lockdown period. And I guess like people having their parents around and family and that kind of thing. And then I asked the next student to write the next line. And she said, I don't know what to write. I got up at 6 a.m. and didn't go to bed till 1, I'm tired. And that was literally, I was like, well, that's your next line. And that was the next line. I think it was, woke up at 6 a.m, went to bed at 1.
I love that line.
So a lot of the lyrics came from just us having conversation. And I think that's something that's really important to take away from songwriting, especially when you have students who say, I don't know what to write, I don't know, I'm not sure. Just having a conversation around a subject, often people will come up with these amazing gems, these like little lyrical nuggets. And if you're writing everything down, or you're writing down phrases or sentences, you often find that add a word, take a word away, and you've got a lovely lyric, or at least an opening line to a verse or a chorus or whatever that you can grow from. So we also talked about how nice it is to roll out of bed and then onto a Zoom call. If you have your camera off, then no one needs to know. So having more time to sleep in, all of those kind of things, not kind of having the same constraints of pre-lockdown life. And that's where the title and the hook of the song came, and that was I Can Do What I Want. Which was quite fun in a way, because although we've had all these restrictions, I guess in some ways we've had more time to do the things that we want. So it was a nice kind of positive. The songwriters decided to add backing vocals to the chorus. We've talked about backing vocals before in other songwriting sessions, and we've just talked about the kind of the impact of and the appropriateness of backing vocals, and they really wanted that kind of slightly pop punk feel, that really almost coming together and singing like as a unit, almost like a kind of like a protest song, I guess, in some ways. So that's what they did. Well, highlighting the feeling of youth voice and making the message more impactful. So student J said that he'd enjoyed lockdown because he'd had lots of time to sing and practice his instruments. He was sure his family probably found this annoying, and he said he was sure that being home had been a good thing for the environment, as in less cars on the road, less pollution. So he wrote, and the air is clearer than before, but I know that it won't last and I don't want that anymore, which again was just these amazing lyrics that just came out of conversation. So both songs, as I said, came together really quickly. We wrote them in a morning. We had a morning session, and conversation was very much the key to getting these lyrics. I didn't really do too much to facilitate the songwriting. I just made sure that I was writing on the board so that they could see what they had, and just encouraging. So reminding them that these sentences and these phrases that they were coming out with were actually really great song lyrics, and sometimes just needed a little bit of tweaking. And the group wanted the songs to be heard as a pair to kind of show the ups and downs of life during lockdown.
So now we can play an example. So this first one is called I Can Do What I Want.
So this was the positives of lockdown.
Oh, actually, I hope. Could you just give me a thumbs up if you can hear this?
Finally, I have the time to be with you. There's more hours in the day than I can get through. Woke up at 6 a.m. Went to bed at 1. I've got nowhere to go. Don't have to get up for anyone. I can do what I want. I can do what I want. I can't go outside, but I've got all I need right here. Right here. I can do what I want.
Oh, that's so good. And had you heard the...
I haven't heard them. No, this is the first time I'm hearing the master, so it's really exciting.
Yeah, their voices sound so good, right?
They sound so good. Yeah, and it was just felt like the lyrics were really strong considering how quickly they wrote these songs. It was just amazing to see it come together so quickly, and it was, as I said, just all from kind of conversation.
Great. And then this is the second one, I Believe in You.
Talk to me. I'm trapped in a cage of silence and solitude, and all I've got is you. I can't breathe. All I can see is these four walls. Before this, we had it all. Phone never rings. I never call. You never call. We never call. Phone never rings. I never call. You never call. We never call. When will this
So we're going to talk now about, get back on the screen, about kind of chord progressions and writing and coming up with, chord progression ideas and melodies and lyrics and stuff.
If I'm working with a student who maybe doesn't necessarily play the piano or doesn't play an instrument, what I try and get them to do initially is, I do have some students that love to just write a cappella, so they'll write their songs and they'll sing them to me, and then I have to kind of sit there and use my ears and try and figure out what works behind them. But you also have some students who are a bit shy and maybe don't know exactly where they want to start, and that's where having a chord progression or using chords and using the piano or using an instrument, doesn't necessarily have to be the piano, can be really useful to help kind of guide some of the songwriting and some of the melody writing. So I try and initially keep it really simple, especially if these students are quite new to songwriting. So not too many chords, keep it in a simple key, so sticking kind of C major, G major, that kind of thing. I like to try and write with them in a way that they can then replicate at home or at school if they do have access to a keyboard. So we're going to talk about how quite often we'll write in C major and then we'll do a session on, this is the C major scale, these are the chords within that scale, this is how you can do this at home, and this is how you can you know, carry on the songwriting if the teacher isn't around to do so. Okay, so what I would do is I might play a couple of different progressions to see what the student likes, or we might talk about how they're feeling, if they might have an idea for the song already that maybe will push the tonality of the chords in a certain way. EJ, how are you feeling today?
Ooh. Okay, I'm feeling a little bit tired, but also kind of happy, I guess.
Okay, happy is good.
Happy tired.
Happy tired. So sometimes you'll get some difficult ones like that. Happy tired, what does that sound like? And sometimes you can ask them what does that sound like to you, and they might have a song or you know, they might have a melody or a song that they've already heard before that they think, oh, this actually really fits with how I'm feeling. And it can be nice just to sit there for 10 minutes and explore. I know it's difficult sometimes with time, but it can be nice to sit there and just say, okay, well, why don't you play me some of the songs that you really like that maybe influence or a reflection of how you're feeling at the moment. So happy, tired feels kind of slow. So I might play something like this. So I'm just literally playing a D major to an A major to a B minor and going quite nice and slowly. So it's still in that kind of major key. So I'd play a few different things and see what the student found was connecting with how they were feeling. So sometimes I'll play something and the student will just say, no. Which is fine. And then we move on to something else and we try some different progressions. And as I said, we'll talk about how to figure out some of those progressions a little bit later on. And then what I would do is, once I have that chord, I might just play it and let it ring out and let the student really have a chance to listen and hear the notes. And if they feel confident enough, I might ask them just to sing a note that fits over the chord. They might not feel confident, they might feel a bit shy, and that's fine. And what I'll do then as well is I will really make sure that I play each note so that they can hear. And I'll maybe play the root note a little bit louder so that they can kind of really hear where it's coming from. And if they still aren't really feeling like they want to sing, then I will sing first. So to demonstrate. EJ, did you want to have a go at seeing if you can hit some of the notes?
I'll be the student.
Yes, please. Amazing. And you might find this, and I often do, is that once you've gone around a few times and the students got used to singing just one note over the chord, they'll naturally start to add little passing notes or create little melodies and create add a few more notes, start songwriting, and they don't even realise that they're actually doing it.
And if they're a little bit shy, you could start you doing the singing and then saying join in when you're ready. And even sometimes they'll just, hum or sing quietly.
Absolutely.
If they're not used to using their voice, but then it becomes,
exactly. And other things like, so I'll sing a line sometimes. I do this quite a lot at Songwriter when I've got a student that's maybe a little bit more shy or less experienced. I might sing a phrase and then either get them to sing kind of almost like a call and response. So I'll say it's question and answer, and I'll say, I'm going to sing something, do you want to sing something back to me? So should we have a go at that?
Yeah.
amazing. And then I might say to the student, okay, well let's switch over. So now you sing something to me and I will sing back to you.
La, la,
La, la, la.
la, 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 la.
La, 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 la. And you can do that. You could do that for a whole lesson, really. And it can be really nice because it can just help the student feel really comfortable singing in front of you. As some of you are instrumental teachers, I guess, initially, sometimes your students might not feel that comfortable singing. They might only have to do it during their exams and they just think, oh my goodness, this is a bit scary. So if you kind of put yourself out there as well and just say, look, I'm doing it too, that can be a really nice way for you to work together and to start breaking down some of that kind of anxiety or any kind of barrier towards having a go. And, you know, you might want to, I just played a wrong chord there and that's fine. And sometimes I'll say, oh, look, I played a wrong chord. I get it wrong too. You know, things like that. Not being perfect is a really lovely leveler, I think, when you're working with in songwriting, because it just reminds you, it also reminds the student that it's okay. Sometimes it doesn't always go perfectly straight away. So I'd move on from that. If we've got some really nice melodies, it can be nice to record them if you can, if you've got like a recording device. If you're really good at notation, you might want to just quickly jot something down just so that you know that you've got it. But the worst thing sometimes can be when you come up with this amazing melody and then you start talking and then suddenly you forget. So moving on from that, we talked about, initially EJ talked about how she was kind of feeling tired but happy. So I would, on a piece of paper, have tired and happy at the top, and I would say, okay, is there anything in particular today that's made you feel happy or that's made you feel tired? And EJ might say...
not getting enough sleep.
Not getting enough sleep. EJ, why haven't you got enough sleep?
Oh, you know, just life.
So they might say homework, or I had to walk the dog, or my little brother kept me up, or whatever it is. And why are you feeling happy? What is it that's making you feel happy?
Because things are opening up again and the sun was out yesterday. I think it's coming back this weekend. So.
Amazing. So I feel like the sun is out is a really lovely little line. So if you hear anything that they say when you're having these conversations, grab onto them and say, you know what, that sounds like a great opening line. The sun's shining, or the sun's out today, or you talked about things opening up and like having a bit more freedom. So maybe something around being free or being able to do what I want, or, you know, just try and paraphrase sometimes what the student's saying if they're really struggling to find the words themselves, because quite often you can draw out of those conversations that kind of first line, and once you've got that, quite often they'll run with it. And if not, you just keep asking questions. And that's the thing with songwriting, I think, especially when you're working in a group setting. I think some of you mentioned that you're working in classes. That's kind of where I'll start. So if we've decided that we're going to choose happy and tired, I'll try and make sure that everyone at least has a word. So I'll just say, okay, what's the first thing that comes into your head when you think happy? Go, 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 go. Yeah. Get everyone to say at least something. Get all of those words down.
Yeah, I did this yesterday actually with because you mentioned First Access. I did it with the First Access ukulele class. We started off with asking about topics, like we had all kinds of topics. We had history, you know, certain games that they play, pizza. And then when you get...
Pizza, always the one at the moment.
When you are working with young children as well, and what I will say, if they come up with kind of silly topics, I'll say, how much do you think you'll be able to write about that? Because remember, we're writing a song, so kind of, without saying that's not the best idea, kind of making them realise why it might not be, without directly saying it. And then you say, yeah, how are you feeling about certain things? And then one of the classes we wrote about emotions, and then everyone gave different types of emotions, and then I said, what's the message you want to say with this song? Because some children you might be working with have never written a song before. So when another thing I ask is, what songs, the songs that you've listened to, what are they about? What topics are they about? What are they saying? And then you start kind of getting in a more clearer direction with what to write.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think that they're all really good ideas that I definitely have used, and I definitely will continue to steal and use from you, EJ. But yeah, no, I think that's a really nice way to go with it, and I think that again, even if you have a student that's really, really struggling, if it's a group setting, what you can do is ask the students maybe to get into pairs and say, okay, you're going to write the first line, and then maybe the partner who's not quite as sure, can you give me an answer to that first line? So it might be, as you said, like the sun's shining, what's going to be the second line to that? You know, I don't know if you ever played that game when you're at primary school where everyone had to write a line and fold it over.
Yeah.
It can be a bit like that. So the sun is shining, and then the next student might say,
I've been waiting so long.
exactly, I've been waiting for so long. Next student, just adding on and on and on. And then once you've got all of those lyrics and those lines up on a board or on a piece of paper, you can start to kind of, if they need you to, and it quite often is the way, I guess, when it's in a group setting, you can start to try and help them to organise some of these ideas. The other choice, or the other option that I sometimes do if I'm working in larger groups, is if we've kind of started or we've got lots of good words or phrases, I might ask them to go off into groups of 3 or 4 or whatever and have a go at writing a verse or a chorus, and then feeding that back to the group, and we can talk about why certain things work, why certain things sound really, really good, what we'd keep, what we'd maybe change. It can be a really nice way to start analysing songs, and also talking about how we're all different and how we'll all approach the same piece of stimulus, or the same chord progression, the same words in quite a different way, so that you can open up lots and lots of conversation around how interesting and how unique and how special songwriting is, because we are just all so different. So let's try and get some lyrics down, I think. So you came up with some really nice melodies. So you might want to just remind the student of maybe some of the melodies. They can just sing them again.
Sun is out today, but I woke up late.
Perfect.
Da, 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 da.
Yeah, nice, exactly. And sometimes it's just nice just to keep going and keep going around the chords and let the students, like you just did there, EJ, you started repeating some of the melodies that you'd written, which is really, really nice. That's naturally how we kind of want to go, or where we want to go when we're songwriting sometimes. So yeah, that was really good.
So then, just kind of improvising as well, and just kind of, I know sometimes we have time pressures with our lessons, but for songwriting it is just so good to have that space. Like if you can do a workshop or have longer sessions, because sometimes because it's from yourself and you're sharing your own thoughts and feelings and everything, if you feel rushed or it's more difficult to come up with something. So just and allowing to just make mistakes as well, and saying you don't have to have the perfect lyrics straight away, literally come up with anything and then we can work on it.
Absolutely. And that can be a project so in one of my nurture groups, that's what we've done this term. We've written well, it's not a song, they've written a rap because we're not singing, but they've written a rap, and that's kind of been our kind of challenge for the term, as well as doing other little exercises around that. So it's something that you can have in the background of each lesson. If you're teaching, maybe we talked a lot about different genres and different styles of music. We were doing a lot around rhythm, which worked really well when we decided to do the rap. So it was a nice kind of 15 minutes at the end of each session. We worked on our song for a little bit, and we used some of the skills that we'd learnt from that first section in our rap, in our song. And it's just, so it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have to do the whole thing in one lesson.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's always nice to remember.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the chords and just just quickly? Could you share the screen?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Of course.
So I think this came up in the last session. It was around chord progressions.
This one?
Yeah, perfect. So what I do with a lot of students, especially songwriting students who maybe don't have any other instrumental lesson. So I have lots and lots of singers that come to Songwriter who are fantastic singers and can come up with amazing melodies, but maybe not that theory is essential, but they don't necessarily have the skills, or they haven't had the exposure to playing instruments quite as much. And this is where something like this can be really useful, and it can be a really nice, useful reminder for us tutors as well. If you're not a pianist, or if you come from a kind of different school of learning and maybe you haven't done theory, that kind of thing, this can just be really, really useful. So what I will get my students to do is to play a C major scale, so C to C. We'll go through what each note is, C, D, E, F, G, A. We'll sing it sometimes. And then we'll write that out on a big piece of paper. I always encourage the students to have their own notebooks so that they can have their lyrics and their chords and everything else in there. And we will literally go through each degree of the scale. I'm sure you can print out things like this as well. I quite like writing them out because I feel like you really learn them when you write everything out. So we'll start with C. We'll get them to look at the piano, and I'll literally say, well, we're going to play a note, we miss a note, we play a note, we miss a note, we play a note. That's your chord one. And we move up each degree of the scale. So we'll say, okay, we're going to move to D. And then what's really nice actually while you're doing this is you can, it's a really simplistic way of talking about tonality, and I know it's not always the case, but we'll do the, is it happy, is it sad, is it major, is it minor? There's all these like kind of little things you can add in to kind of help open up the students' eyes to a tiny bit of music theory, but also start getting them thinking about how do the chords sound, which can be really useful when you have those conversations about how they want the chord progressions to be when you talk about the feelings. So literally we'll go through each degree of the scale and we'll write them all out in their notebook, and we'll write out what the notes are so they've got them. And then we'll start playing around with, okay, so now we've got these chords that are in this key that we know are all kind of friends and all kind of work together. How do we come up with a progression? And quite often what I will do is just literally get the students to play a few different chords, and for them to really use their ears and to think about what chords sound nice together. You know, does this work? And they might say, yeah, actually that really works for what I want to do. Or we'll say, okay, like, you know, do you want to do like G? So we'll just play through different chords. And again, if you're not 100% sure as a tutor, if it's not your kind of background, again, this can just be a nice way for you to also get to think, okay, well, what chords actually work well together? So you're kind of learning and playing at the same time. But also, like I said before, it gives the students the opportunity to continue with the songwriting and the music making when you're not there. Having these chords that they can play or hear, or that you know that you've made recordings of, or whatever it is that you want to do.
And also talking about the different sections of the song and probably not having the same chords in the same sequence the whole time. And for the chorus, what are they trying to say? How does it need to go up musically? Does it need to go down? And kind of letting them explore that as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, keeping it nice and simple, but absolutely trying to change it up if you can, if you're able to. And also, like we were saying, just playing around with that whole idea of tonality, major, minor, what fits with what you're trying to say. Like you were saying, EJ, when you talk to them about, well, what actually is this song saying? You have to think about then well, what chords kind of fit. If you're singing about something really sad, do we want to start with C major? I don't know. We do. Like, you know, you have those conversations.
Yeah.
Hopefully that is something that you found useful. And then what's useful is just you can go through, you know, move on, or you can move on to G major or whatever. Just keep going through all of the different scales and just working them out with your students and letting them have the opportunity to kind of understand the chords.
Yeah, great. So I'm now briefly going to talk about a one-to-one lesson I've been having with a student. So yeah, this person was referred to me through a music service, but she hadn't accessed any music lessons through Hertfordshire Music Service before, and it was during lockdown, and her mum thought it would be a good idea to kind of give her something musical to kind of work on, and she loves songwriting and was already singing, but just hadn't really had lessons before, and she's actually now going on to university to study songwriting, which is really cool. So yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about creating melodies and then play an example as well. So yeah, she started off kind of less confident with creating her own, but over the weeks, we've seen each other for probably over 4 months now. She's become much more confident with creating her own melodies, like completely on her own. We've used different instruments, like I play guitar, she plays the ukulele, and she's been practicing learning different chords as well. Keyboard, and then also more recently playing instrumentals on YouTube. So you can literally type in, punk instrumental or hip hop, and then they can go away and, you know, practice that on their own as well and find out, like, listen to lots of different examples. So that's quite a nice idea, especially for those who don't play any instrument but want to songwrite. We sang her idea. We would sing her idea a few times, kind of like what we talked about, and talk about whether certain notes could be different. And we've also talked about how the vocal melodies can differ in the different sections of a song, and trying not to only focus on lyrics if someone is interested in just songwriting and not an instrument, trying to kind of make it more holistic and well-rounded by giving those different skills. In these lessons, just talking about agency, obviously it's really important, and the things we've been talking about, it just does naturally come through. So I always ask, we'll use the name Ella, what she wants to write about, and I'll only guide or make suggestions, and obviously this then like increases the engagement, but over time. So also not putting pressure if they don't have an idea yet. And then one thing I do, for example, if they're online lessons, I'll just say, okay, I'll give you a few minutes or a couple of minutes to listen to the song or listen to the chords and see if you can come up with anything. And then either ask for her to read out the lyrics or for her to sing it. But just with online, because there's like the lag and all of those technical things, sometimes you could say, they could play the song on their like phone and then sing it out loud so you can hear both. So just kind of navigating that. Okay, so in terms of the kind of questions to ask when the young person's stuck, I would say, what are you trying to say in this line? So sometimes a young person might come up with 2 lines and make a rhyme, but the rhyme might just be they've just used a word for the sake of rhyming, so the message isn't really like the same, or they're not quite getting it across. So you can ask them those questions, or talk about what they're trying to say. How would you feel if you were this person, if they're writing about someone else from a different point of view, and what do you want to tell the audience? And then just giving that time and space for creativity and ideas. I've got an example.
Dancing with you on the only cloud in the sky. The stars create a spotlight and it feels like paradise. The fairies are singing to us, we stop to look around. You tell me you love me and I hear no other sound.
So that was just from playing the chords a few times, and then giving her time to come up with a melody. So that was really strong, and quite a few weeks into it. And then another thing we did was, and this is a kind of idea you can use either in a class setting or instrumental lesson, is writing to a brief. So either about a particular issue, if they want to write more political song or social justice, or writing about a character in a film, or even for an advert or something. So this could be kind of a good idea if for a student who's been writing for a while and you want to kind of push them, and if they are interested in songwriting as even a career, the different types of songwriting that you can do, even writing for other people. So do they have a friend that wants to sing a song that they could write that song for them, and putting themselves in someone else's shoes. So when we wrote a song, she wrote a song about Pulp Fiction. She used the character Mrs. Wallace, and I hadn't actually watched the film, so I was just kind of going with what she said. But I've heard it's but she is 18, so it's okay. And she said about Mrs. Wallace, maybe people don't understand her because she puts up a front and has issues that she struggles with, but she is much more than what people see her as and what the film shows us. So I thought that was really cool. So she said, Mrs. Wallace, as mysterious as can be, Mrs. Wallace, no one dances quite like she. Her seductive eyes have grown men fooling at her feet. Her power runs so deep, Mother Nature can't compete. So I thought that was really cool. And it's just nice to push the boat out with creativity and thinking outside the box.
And I think with the younger ones as well, just to add, quite often I will get them to write a story, and then we turn that into a song, which can be lovely. Or you can do things like, if I'm really stuck, we'll do something like Days of the Week, like a kind of diary of what you've done, or what your dream week would be, or whatever. So you can kind of play around with things like, a trip to the zoo. Let's talk about a trip to the zoo that we went on. Whatever it is, I think sometimes when you've got the primary age, it can be nice to give them a little bit of encouragement if they're stuck, by giving them an idea that they feel familiar with, because most of them have done creative writing and story writing in school, and then talking about how we turn that into a song.
Okay, so we're going to show you an example of a performance at the Royal Albert Hall. So we have a Hertfordshire Schools Gala every 2 years, and we choose some songwriters to perform. And for this one, there were songwriters who had they worked together before?
They hadn't worked together before, no. So just to give you a little bit before we watch the video, so we had lots of really wonderful students who came along. One of them was kind of like a seasoned songwriter here, and she always kind of wrote acoustic guitar. She's really into the Smiths and like Morrissey, always that kind of vibe. A really great lyricist. And then we had another student who was quite new, who was really into music production, EDM, and had created, or came to the songwriter group and had created this really amazing backing track. But he needed some help with coming up with a melody and some lyrics. So although they were from completely kind of contrasting genres, we thought it would be quite interesting to put them together. And they came up with this amazing song, really wonderful, that they we worked quite hard to kind of create an arrangement. We got musicians in, so it had kind of like a live and an electronic feel. And it was just, EJ and I were talking about this the other day, it's really useful sometimes for students to, especially some of your more advanced students sometimes, to push them out of their comfort zone in terms of genre, and also just to encourage collaboration and working with others. And you'll see that in this video.
I don't know where the light is leading me, but I will find my way. If I find something hiding in the spark and everybody follows it. It all starts with a spark and everybody follows it. It's time to move on now, even though I can't forget. Out of the dark I've come, out of the dark. I'm finding my way out of the darkness. I'm finding my way into the light. I'm finding my way. I've broken these chains. Out of the night, I'm finding my way, my way, my way. I'm finding my way into the light. I've broken these chains. Out of the night, I'm finding my way. Now I'm finding my way. Now I'm finding my way.
Oh, all the memories.
That was just before lockdown.
Yeah. But yeah, it was amazing to allow the musicians to have a chance to really think about song structure and backing vocals and instrumentation and all of those kind of things. So it's even with your younger students, you can start doing that. So if you are teaching first access maybe with a different instrument, you might want to sing a line of the song and then the instruments play like a kind of like a call and response thing, or you might want to have some nice kind of long notes underneath or whatever it is. You can start talking about instrumentation, I think, and song development at quite like a young age, and it can help make the sessions maybe a bit more, like you said about agency. It can make the song kind of what the students want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if you have like, if your music service has iPads or anything like that, and using GarageBand and letting them kind of play around.
Yeah, so useful. Or djembes or whatever, like even things like that.
Yeah, so that's the end of our talking. But if you have any questions, then yeah, please feel free to ask away.
We're actually thinking of starting up a songwriter club within one of our music centres next term, and I know that we have a singer-songwriter member of staff who's coming back to us next year, so it'd be great. Maybe I should put them in touch with you. So you've obviously got a bit of an established path there. He can pick some ideas from you, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. Oh, I also forgot to mention there's we've got some resources on the Changing Tracks website.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll put that in the chat if that's helpful.
Great, thank you. I'm trying to write down his questions as I went. I noticed that the first example you gave, I can't remember what the song was called. The first thing you played, the lyrics were really well spaced out. So there weren't very many lyrics per line, but the person singing had really. There's that basic thing of understanding the structure of the length of the bars and phrases and so on. Some of the words are quite melismatic, so they'd really filled the space nicely. And I find working with younger children, it's quite hard to get them to do that. So I've got, we're doing 2-chord songs because quite often, early stage, they've only learnt 2 chords on the guitar or something. So I've got a class of 30, some have keyboards, some have guitars. So we're partway through the year and they're only really confident on switching between 2. So I put a backing track on with those 2 chords and I try and get them to do something physical to show that they can feel that change. We do some improvisations maybe with the keyboards of them changing so they can feel when the notes clash and where they are consonant with those chords. So try and get them to feel that. But as soon as they start writing lyrics, they rush through it. They quite often start the next line early. And some of them are really instinctively musical. But I was wondering if you have any tips for helping get them all to really feel that and to wait for the next phrase to start.
Have you tried talking the lyrics and clapping the rhythm? So I find that a lot with primary. Like you said, some people just instinctively feel it, but sometimes there is that tendency to rush. So I might have like a metronome, or I'll just be tapping or whatever, and I'll get them to speak through all of the syllables, and we'll start to talk about and think about how that kind of works. And that's where actually writing really simple raps can be really useful for learning that skill as well, and it's such a good crossover. So that's something that I use. I don't know if that's something you've tried already.
We've put up. I've started normally from the point of doing rap first. Actually, I normally show them some videos from Little Kids Rock about how to learn lyric writing and stuff for rapping. And then they normally get that. It's just then when it's fitting it to music, it seems to go off track. They don't seem to have the patience to wait for the chords to finish.
It's too exciting. Also, just the other thing that I do with that, because I have this problem again, like I say quite a lot, is I will literally try and, if I've got the instrument, I will sing the phrase. So I do this even in my one-to-one lessons sometimes, because I've got students that just run away because they get overexcited. So I'll sing the phrase, and then I'll get them to sing the phrase, and then I'll sing the next phrase, and then and I think sometimes it is just a bit of a slow process, isn't it? And it can be just one of those things.
I think clapping in a circle, so that they're trying to play to the rhythm, but they have to also do the weighting.
That's a good idea.
And just changing the tempo each time, so go like round once, kind of slow, and then you speed it up. Just I think rhythm games, like practicing that can help.
Don't copy me back, all of those kind of things. I think,
And I liked your call and response stuff you were doing earlier in terms of advising the melody, because that obviously then really reinforces that sense of having to wait for somebody else and waiting for that phrase to finish.
Yeah, that's true.
I haven't really done that yet. I'm trying to apply all the things you're saying to a whole class context,
which can be really tricky. It can be really tricky. Even things like singing the register. So like I do two different things. I do a hello song, so I'll do it. So it's a call and response, H-E-L-L-O, and then they'll say H-E-L-L-O. This is how we say hello. This is how we say hello. Move your feet to the beat. Move your feet to the beat. Can you feel my heartbeat? And then they'll do that. And we'll do it in lots of different ways. So I'll let a student each week be the leader once they kind of know the song, and they can do it in any way they like. So any kind of rhythm, any melody, any actions, and everyone has to copy, but we have to make sure that we're all doing it in time. And then also singing the register, so like coming up with a little melody, hello, blah blah blah, are you here? Yes I am, my name's da da da, whatever. Again, you can make that up. It might be something you want to write together, but it's all about just everyone has to, like EJ was saying, everyone has to wait their turn, and they get really used to the idea of that melody, because it is just repeated as well. So each student in the class is singing pretty much the same thing, but it's their name. So they have to try and make it fit. They have to think about the syllables in their name.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. You talked about, I think you were saying that it's easier to write about emotions to develop a song. You talked about pizza not being a good idea. But I was thinking, if you write about pizza, you could go into all the toppings and things.
I know,
but,
that's true. Pineapple versus no pineapple.
Do you think is emotions an easier thing to develop because you can get them to because it suits the music better? It's easier to link with the musical chords and so on.
I think you can write a kind of fun song, like I've definitely done that before. I guess it depends what you want to get out of the session as well, or but I think it doesn't have to be about emotions. Like it can be quite fun, especially if they're depending on what instruments they're playing as well. Like if it's percussion or ukulele, that kind of suits that quite well. But I think it's just about the content. Like sometimes if they say pizza and then or a game like I don't know anything about gaming, but one of the games that they play, and then you start saying, okay, so tell me about it, and then they don't have much to say because it's quite limiting. So I think it depends on how much they can say. You could say, how does pizza make you feel? Like when do you eat wipizza with your friends? Who's
there? What does it smell like? Like where were you when you were eating it? So I guess you can pull all those things out, can't you?
Just as you mentioned, their starter option. I think it's a starter option. This where you're saying students write down a line. And then they fold it over. Is that something you'd use to develop lyric writing with the whole class?
Yeah, I've done it before. I used to do it kind of more as story writing, but it can be a really nice way, again, if you've got students that are a bit shy, or if you have students that sometimes maybe dominate the sessions, it can be really nice. It can be a nice way to make sure that everyone's had a chance to say something. No one's being put on the spot, so no one feels like they're having to say their ideas out loud. Then you've got them and you can just write them out, and then you can kind of arrange and adapt. Do you know what I mean? You can kind of, you know, cross lines out or cross words out and kind of move things around once you've got it all on the board.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
Oh, another icebreaker I do, and you can do it with the whole class as well, is kind of the same thing but just saying it out loud. So, and yeah, just making a story like as a whole group. So I went to the park yesterday and saw, and then the next person says, I don't know, a bird
Flying in the sky.
Yeah, and just going, doing that.
And you can always add in, what I sometimes do is I'll add in, and I felt, or like, and I saw, like you're saying, or, you know, and whatever it is that you want to add to kind of help bring out a little bit more information, because sometimes I find that the younger students, it can turn into list writing. So it's like, I went to the shop, I ate bread, you know, and you sometimes want to get away from lists. So adding in those little kind of questions can be quite useful.
And presumably if they're going back to that one where they fold it over, they're not seeing what the previous person has written, so they're not able to write. Do you worry about that at all? Is that the next step in the process?
Yeah, no, I think sometimes that can be really fun. So especially if you've got a class that maybe aren't engaged, you can then have these kind of like, you fold it out and you sometimes come up with, there's some silly things in there because it doesn't quite work because, you know, obviously you haven't seen what's gone before, and that can actually be a really nice way to get the students to engage. And then you swap out the things that don't necessarily work, or you just rephrase them, but deep down you will know that actually that said, oh, you know, the dog is purple and it has green spots or whatever. And that can just be a nice kind of like little bonding, laughing tool to break the ice.
Cool. So I'm just trying to look at my notes. I was just thinking, the way your process seems to be developing chords and then melody and then lyrics, where you went through it earlier. Do you find that coming up with music first then can be restrictive on the lyric writing?
Yeah, I think this is just one approach as well. Like sometimes we started with lyrics or even melody. Like sometimes, like in the Songwriter Club, for example, a student will have some lyrics and not be able to play an instrument, and then have a melody already, and then we would kind of fit some chords to that melody. How have you been doing it?
So I only have whole class, and they tend to only have a limited palette of chords as well. So you talk about giving them the choice and chord structure, and actually I don't tend to do that because I know that they've only got, say, 2 or 3 chords. So I then put them in a backing track in a sequence that works, and I keep playing that backing track for them to come up with some lyrics over and then create some melody over. So that's the way I've been working.
Yeah.
And so getting to write the lyrics first, and actually sometimes we took a poem that they were doing in English and we gave them those lyrics. But I don't feel they really have a connection with that because it wasn't their lyrics. So I think next year I'm finding devices to get them to come up with their own stuff. Yeah. It's just that thing, there'll be 1 or 2 in the class who will flourish in that situation and give you loads and loads and loads of lyrics. So I'm looking at making it more democratic, which is why I quite like these things you had before.
Yeah, oh nice.
I think definitely in whole class, like you're saying, in whole class settings, having the chords first is definitely a bit easier. It can be a real challenge otherwise. You've got people singing in different keys and you're kind of like so I think what you're doing makes sense.
Which instrument are they playing?
Keyboard and guitars.
Oh, cool.
Okay. So the keyboard is fine because they can quite easily find that triad pattern and copy it, and so you can give them a new chord very quickly, whereas guitarists, they can't remember the one you've been teaching for several weeks, so they can't remember where to put their fingers. So I find that we tend to do you find the same?
No, I can't play the guitar, so I'm that person who takes 7 weeks to learn one chord. Sorry, is what I would say.
Is there space to kind of to split off into groups for them to write maybe like a verse in a group of 4 or something?
Yes and no. I've got a big hall, but then it's very noisy, so they split into groups, but there's a lot of noise pollution, so it's a little bit limited for the ones, especially if you can't concentrate and interact very easily with distraction. So sort of. So if the weather's nice, they can go into the playground. But yeah,
Okay.
not easily.
Yeah.
Have you tried the whole? We've done it with ukulele sometimes, where you have them in groups of 3, and every group has a chord. So that kind of takes the pressure away from them having to change too quickly.
Yeah.
So you can kind of
yeah.
just I'm sure you probably already do that.
Yeah. That's quite nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of the just playing musical feature stuff when it flashes through the chords quickly, and I always give them the option to take just one chord if they want. It's more the fact that the whole class, once we play it, they still only know between them a number of chords. But yeah, the keyboards take the more complex chords in that situation if we do use more.
Yeah.
Nice. That's nice you've got both instruments together.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it means things like improvisation is, again, much easier on the keyboard because they can see it in front of them, so they come up with melodies. But I want to use singing, I think, a little bit more to explore that for the guitarists who find it hard to get around the instrument. On a completely different subject, you then talked about your student. I think this is the student I'd heard you talk about before, who you had this sort of referral from. In terms of how was that funded, the referral, and all these one-to-one sessions you had?
I think from Youth Music.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have certain funding from that. I'm not too knowledgeable on the funding. I don't know if Michael's here, but he's here.
There we go.
Hi, Jen. Hi. Some of the funding comes from Youth Music. We've also accessed funding, Arts Council funding, that we use through remission of fees in appropriate cases as well. And in some cases, schools fund from pupil premium.
Yeah.
Some of the work EJ's done, or some of the other work we've done in PRUs has been funded by the PRUs themselves.
Okay.
So some of the work, and some of that went online during lockdown. Yeah. Sorry, hopefully that helps a bit.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I've spoken to somebody else who does that sort of referral work, and when I've spoken to our organisation about how we organise it, it's always the funding that sort of slightly gets in the way. So if we offer something for free, it's great. But if we offer something where somebody has to pay, then it becomes more complex. I'm just wondering how you organised it there.
That's really interesting. When we were working in PRUs, actually, it got to the point that they got some of the funding was attached to stuff that we had to show outcomes to, and they found the reporting so onerous that in the end they decided they'd fund it themselves. So it's a balance of
Is that the tactic you use now?
yeah, it's always a good tactic, isn't it?
Brilliant, thank you. That was all my questions, but it's a really, really useful session.